Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on this Tuesday. Tonight, we'll get the second release of the College Football Playoff Top 25 poll, one that South Carolina was excluded from to the surprise of many last week. And I think a lot of us felt like beating Vanderbilt in the fashion that they did on Saturday warrants enough to slide into that top 25 somewhere. So we'll see coming up tonight. But Chris, you posed the question earlier that many people have been asking as Carolina has put together these last couple wins. Is there any shot of the Gamecocks still possibly being able to make the playoffs if they win out and some chaos unfolds ahead of them?
They would need chaos. Now, some people may say, no, don't care how well South Carolina's playing. Don't look, and I know the starting point, right? Carolina has to win every game from here on out.
Yes.
I realize that. So I'm posing a what if. If they went 9-3, would that be good enough? And some people may say, absolutely not. They got 3 losses, you're out. Don't care if you won your last 6 games. Don't care if half of them or heck, more than half of them are blowouts. You can't have 3 losses and make it. But opinions are mixed. There's at least, I must say there's a chance, is one of them, with a 14% chance. Now, 14% is not very good, but that is a chance.
Yeah.
Missouri, the opponent this weekend, is at 8%. LSU is at 7%. One thing that we know is the SEC is a strong league this year. You could be the most hardcore, Gamecock hater, SEC hater. You can't look at it objectively and not recognize SEC is pretty darn good. So when you're looking at teams that have an opportunity, again, you look 5 conference champions. So there's one from the SEC. The SEC will get multiple teams in. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
The question is how many. And so for South Carolina, they need that number to be high. So to me, kind of like in March Madness, where if you're a team that's on the bubble, you don't want upsets in conference championship games and things like that. You want the most powerful teams to win the conference title, and then you're going to need some help to beat out some other ones. I think the most realistic path, again, provided you win out, all that, you're probably going to have to leapfrog a 2-loss team or 2.
Yeah.
Now, Ari Wasserman from On 3 wrote something this morning. He put 26 teams. Now, this is his opinion. The All-State Playoff Predictor is more of a computer. They don't even go into detail of how they come up with this, but I'm sure it's computerized. His is a human, and it's one man's opinion. But he has 26 teams. He does not have South Carolina in the mix.
Okay.
He has Missouri in there.
So for me, last week when they got excluded from the first top 25, that to me said that they weren't already being viewed high enough by the committee to, in my opinion, do enough over the next couple weeks to get in.
Yeah.
However, if for some reason they look at that win over Vanderbilt and say, you know what, that was really impressive, and we put them at 20 or 21, if they are that high in tonight's rankings, which I don't think they will be, if they were, and when you look at the mess of Big 12 teams in front of them, as well as the, I'm assuming Miami's going to fall pretty far after losing to Georgia Tech. You have the most likely ACC championship matchup between Miami and SMU in front of you. A lot can unfold in front of them to where dominoes may fall. And if Carolina again wins out over what I'm assuming will still be a ranked Missouri this weekend and a ranked Clemson here in a couple weeks, maybe. I'm not saying it's high, but if enough chaos unfolds.
Carolina, you got to win out. You need to win out with style points. And I told Wes and I were talking about this yesterday on the podcast on GC Live. The committee is always going to come up there. I think Wes made this point last week. The committee's going to go up there and say, we have our criteria. These are our criteria. They always stray from them.
Of course.
Because, they use the criteria to justify when they put teams in.
Yeah.
when there's a controversial decision, they go outside of the criteria. Look, we saw that FSU last year.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of whether or not you thought they should be in, the committee said, well, they're a different team without their quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Which they were, clearly. But I think this year for South Carolina, it would have to be a case of, yeah, they have 3 losses. Yeah, maybe some of these other SEC teams have too. But it would need to be things like, well, South Carolina won their last 6. Maybe you won at least half of those, maybe more by a lot. You've got style points. They've got higher quality losses and higher quality wins maybe than some of the other teams. You may, I don't know if it's, just subliminally or explicitly, you may have someone in that committee go, hey, anybody watch that LSU game? They kind of got hosed a little bit,
Right. Right.
And, they were missing their quarterback for parts of that game. And, so I think there's some little pieces. Again, that's a lot. You might be listening saying, you just went through a lot of things that probably aren't going to happen.
Sure.
That might be true, but those are the kind of things they would need.
Well, what helps their case, and again, I don't think they have a high chance, but just kind of playing devil's advocate here, what helps their case is LSU, Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M all winning out. Those teams don't play each other, by the way. LSU obviously suffered their 3rd loss this past weekend. We think that may be enough to bump them out. But if Alabama, who looks like they're heating up now, wins out, and I don't know who's going to be in Atlanta, by the way, so I'm just throwing that out the window for the time being. They win out. A&M wins out, which would include a win over a highly ranked Texas team in the final week of the regular season. And then Ole Miss, who, again, looks like one of the best teams in college football right now, continues to win out. Then you have 2 high-quality losses in Ole Miss and Alabama, and you have a very high-quality win in A&M if they're still floating somewhere around the top 15 that can help out South Carolina's case.
I think your concern if LSU wins out is, does LSU jump you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're balancing, we need that loss to look better versus we need that loss,
So maybe LSU loses one more to drop to, at best, 8-4, and they go to Florida, play Vanderbilt, and go to Oklahoma. I think Vandy's the only conceivable loss I see on that. So you might have to cheer for the Commodores if you're still holding out hope for South Carolina here to make the playoff.
Here's the other thing. This was brought up yesterday in a conversation. So let's say Texas loses to A&M at Kyle Field. They would be 10-2. And so you're sitting there going, 10-2, they're in. But are they? They're 10-2, and I'm looking across their schedule. You remember early in the season, man, Texas went to the Big House and won against number 10 Michigan.
Yep.
So what? They're not very good.
It's nothing now.
Red River rivalry. Against number 18 Oklahoma, 34-3.
Texas's schedule is pretty weak.
Right. So, they lost to Georgia by 15. They pulled out a squeaker against Vandy. I'm posing a serious question. What would be the quality win for Texas? Now, you play the schedule that's in front of you.
Yeah.
But what would be a more impressive resume? South Carolina at 9-3 or Texas at 10-2? You may say, well, it's Texas because they only lost 2. But is it? And that's the type of debate. Again, that's the type of thing where somebody would have to look at it and say, actually, I think the Gamecocks are better.
If that plays out and they lose to A&M, Vanderbilt will probably be their most impressive win. And I don't know if Vanderbilt would be ranked by the season's end. We'll see. But, yeah, that's what it's looking like.
But, the counterpoint, they would be a 2-loss team, and they're Texas. Let's not kid ourselves.
Brand goes a long way.
Here's my thing. Remember when Greg Sankey was stumping for as many as 8 SEC teams to make it?
Yep.
If Carolina wins out, is he going to pick up the phone and say, my officials screwed that game up for the Gamecocks, and they deserve to be in?
Let's play this scenario out here. We have a quarterfinal, or I guess in this case, a first-round game being played on December 20th, and you're trying to appeal to a casual audience of sports fans. Who are they most likely to watch, Texas or South Carolina?
That's the point I was just making. Your name brand programs will more often than not get the benefit of the doubt. It's just the reality. But with how this season looks right now, kind of seems like the officials helped the wrong team. If you're looking at LSU, South Carolina.
Yeah, maybe so.
You know what I mean?
And again, it's been through the first 3/4 of the year, it's been nothing but chaos week in and week out. And there's no reason to think these next 3 weeks can't be any different. So who knows what's going to happen? Don't give up hope completely. Like I said, if they're high enough tonight, that will sway my opinion a little bit, but we'll have to see. That's coming up between the Champions Classic games tonight on ESPN around 8:30 for that next college ball playoff top 25 reveal. Come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. Want to get to a story of a coach that was fired that I don't think had any right to be fired. What that coming up next? It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating here on the game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris Clark. Wrapping up today's edition of the show, Wes Mitchell will jump in with us here in the 11 o'clock hour for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. I want to hit a story that's, I guess, still kind of developing. News came out yesterday out of Kennesaw State that they have, depending on who you ask, either fired Brian Bohannon or he resigned from being head coach of the football team. Now, the athletic director said he resigned. Brian Bohannon said he was fired, so I'm sure more details to come out from that. We're in that time of the year where programs start deciding, okay, we want to go in a different direction. We're going to fire this coach, fire this coordinator, whatever it may be. This one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. For those that don't know, and again, Kennesaw State is brand new to FBS just this season. Brian Bohannon has been at the helm of this program since it began back in 2015. And in his time there, he has compiled a record of 72-38. But for the first handful of years, they were in FCS up until joining FBS this season. In those first 5 years in FCS, they went 48-15 with multiple playoff appearances and were the best 5-season startup program in FCS history. They made the transition up to FBS with still work to do on facilities, not a whole lot of money, and obviously a roster that was not quite ready to compete just yet. And up to this point, they had one win over Liberty a couple weeks ago in their long undefeated streak. It doesn't make sense to me that they fired this guy, though, because he's obviously the one that built your program. You had tasked him with leading it into this transition in FBS, and now in less than 1 year at the next level, you just give up on him? That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense. And, the other thing that makes this look just like a really poor operation is that the Kennesaw State AD came out after and said, because you had the whole thing, Brian Bohannon said, look, I'm going to make it clear. I didn't resign.
Yeah.
I was fired. And the AD comes out and says, because he's asked, well, why did y'all say he resigned? He said it was an honest mistake and misunderstanding.
How does that get misconstrued?
I mean, so are you trying? So it's either you had a couple different releases written and you hit the button on the wrong one, or you were just let's help him out and make him look better by saying he resigned. Brian Bohannon's like, no, I don't want to look better. I want to be the coach that I deserve to be. Really weird firing. And sometimes there are times and with football coaches, really pick any sport, where you need to make a head coaching change. Those times exist. Sometimes, though, you see coaching changes happen, or you'll see a school cycle through a bunch of coaches and none of them work, including some that seem like they should.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you need to look at something different. You need to look at the school itself. You need to look at the athletic department. Is there something else going on there? Because those elements, the athletics department, the school, the alignment, the support, the resources, those things are very important to a coach's success. You can plop down a great coach at a place that is a mess and they are not necessarily going to win. That seems like what you have here at Kennesaw State. They had success. Yes, there's a transition when you move up. Maybe if Brian Bohannon got 5 years there at the FBS level, maybe it wouldn't have worked. We'll never know now. It certainly, to me, seems like more of an athletics department issue.
And you can look back at their record of the past couple of years. It hasn't been the greatest. 5-6 in 2022, 3-6 last year, and now currently sitting at 1-8 this year. But that's all part of the transition. So they switched conferences 2 years ago. They became an independent last year and then jumped up to FBS this year. So a whole lot of changes happening within this program. One that, as of right now, doesn't have the most financial resources. They're still trying to upgrade their facilities there at Fifth Third Bank Stadium to get up to the FBS level. It just seems like you're putting that coach in a tough spot and then asking him to juggle all of it and saying, well, why aren't you winning 7-8 games right out of the jump? Like it's unreasonable. And again, we talk about there being such a quick trigger on coaches these days in college football. And maybe that changes when you now have this new model set to take place next year where, athletes are going to be paid and you do have to worry about how much you're spending on the athletes compared to what you're spending on coach buyouts, where maybe you get the leash a little bit longer. But this, to me, seems like Kennesaw State's just trying to set themselves back even more than they already are in the midst of this transition.
Reminds me of a quote. I interviewed former South Carolina AD Eric Hyman recently, and he was talking more about the AD board-president relationship, but it seems to apply here. They micromanage your activities. They hold you accountable for the results. And then when things go south, they're so far behind you, you need binoculars to find them. That kind of sounds like...
That sounds pretty accurate.
Hey, we're going to give you these tough circumstances. You better win now, even though we're not helping you win at all.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And, again, a weird situation there with Coach Bohannon at Kennesaw State. And, again, he's out now. And, again, sounds like he was fired, according to what the coach said. And we'll see what the Owls do, as they are still a bit adrift in this transition up to the FBS level. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, coming up next on your Tuesday on the Game.
Appreciate our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating being the presenting sponsor of the Gamecock Club Hour every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Game since 1983. Krantz Cooling and Heating has been serving homes and businesses around the Midlands. Outstanding HVAC service from a family-owned and operated business. Shout out to my guy, Justin Krantz. He is the general manager of Krantz Cooling and Heating. They're always out in the community, supporting the community, big local focus. They can help you with any of your HVAC needs at your home or at your business. Air conditioning, heating, indoor air quality. Whether you need maintenance, whether you need repairs, if you need a new installation, they can help you with all of it. When you join the Krantz Club, that's Krantz with a K, Club with a K, you can gain the peace of mind knowing that your home will receive regular and professional attention. KrantzCooling.com, Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K. KrantzCooling.com, or 803-672-3224.
11 o'clock on your Tuesday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tired Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark along with you here. So we give final thoughts on what happened this past weekend against Vanderbilt, and we'll slowly start turning our attention to Missouri as the week goes along, as Carolina, as Wes and I talked about in that last hour, Chris and I talked about that last hour, already bowl eligible and kind of figuring out where that destination is going to be. Wes, do you have a preferred bowl destination spot? Do you care, or is it more about the opponent?
College football playoff is my preferred.
So you're in the 14% club then.
Yeah. That can you imagine? I mean, I feel bad even like getting the fans fired up about that possibility, but I went to lunch with one of me and Chris's good mutual friends.
Lunch buddies?
Yeah, and I introduced him to the college football playoff predictor where you can play with the things.
Right, oh, God. Right. He's not going to get any work done.
Then I got about 5 texts in a row. Well, hey, if this happens, if that happens. So
it's been a chaotic year. I mean,
it's really not that far-fetched, honestly, if South Carolina, the big thing, just keep winning, right? But, I mean, I hate to say I don't care about the bowl destinations anymore, but I don't know that I do. Obviously, for the players, you want for it to just be somewhere cool, like a good experience. But bowl game, if you're not in the college football playoff, bowl games are kind of more about, hey, the young guys, like get them ready, honestly. But the fact that you can now go on ESPN.com or go to that predictor, and South Carolina, no matter how low the percentages are, is one of the teams that pops up. That's kind of, in some ways, it's like my college game day index, which is like the Waffle House index.
Yep.
Like, if they're talking about you on college game day as one of those games that they predict at the end most weeks, that's a pretty good sign.
I want to say they've been on a run now, 4, 5, 6 straight games of being on the game day pick list every week.
The game day index is pointing up.
It's good.
And so I think that's another good index there, man, is like, all right, if you're on that list, no matter how low, that's a good sign. And I mean, we sat here and warned people after ODU, like, hey, guys, let's not pretend one game is a season. But let's also be honest. None of us were also sitting there after watching that game saying, oh, man, this could be a playoff team.
Right.
Like, be honest with yourself, you know?
Well, and I think it's also significant, just looking at these past 2 weeks specifically, I think your 2 biggest wins of the year. I mean, A&M being the ranked team that they were is obviously going to go at number 1, but I'd say Vandy compared to Oklahoma, Kentucky, Old Dominion, Akron, that's definitely the number 2 win, and a quality win, even though they weren't ranked themselves. So you're winning big games, you're gaining momentum, everything's coming together in the month of November just as we hoped it would.
Yeah, it really is. And, I don't remember if we talked about this yesterday or not, but this is kind of, to me, you always kind of go into a game or a season and you're looking at maybe something as specific as a position group or something as general as like, hey, the entire team or the offense. And with this offense, there were kind of a lot of different areas where we said, well, hey, if this happens, maybe this is what you get out of the offense. Well, if that happens, and what we're starting to see, like I remember some of these details we talked about. What if Sellers is just already ready to be that guy? Like I remember we kind of framed it up like that. And early on, he did look like a guy making his first career start, to be fair. But now we're kind of seeing him be that guy, like the guy we envisioned he could be. What if the offensive line takes a major jump, particularly as a run-blocking unit? Did we see that necessarily right off the bat? No. Have we seen that the last couple of games? Absolutely. What if the receivers can just be kind of serviceable for you as a whole? And so I think you're starting to see this offense, not that it's perfect, but at kind of its prime, like the best case scenario. And you go back, you look at the second half of that Vandy game, and look at the fact that Vandy, even at a loss, they managed to kind of do the whole bend but don't break thing on defense, limit your possessions on offense, shorten the game, right? You had the 1 3-and-out on offense in the second half, but you had touchdown, 75 yards. Touchdown, 75 yards. A 3-and-out. Then touchdown, 61 yards, I think. Then a nearly 6-minute drive that was end of game, put away. Like that, and that's every coach's dream.
And that 3-and-out, Wes, the 1 3-and-out, you punted the ball to the 1 yard line.
Yeah, and almost almost got a recovery
Lisa
there.
almost had to pay somebody a lot of money for that one.
Man, we're going to hit that thing before
We're going
it's over.
to.
We're going to.
Getting close.
It's going to be at Clemson. I'm going to just call that.
Ooh.
But, guys, this team is fun to watch right now. And I think the most fun, or the thing you can kind of just hang your hat on if you're a South Carolina fan out there, is that nothing you're seeing is flukish. And nothing you're seeing is like about the opponent. Like sometimes you win games because your opponent does not play well. South Carolina is enforcing its will, its attitude, its game plan, however you want to put it, on its last few opponents. And so that to me is a sign of a really good team. It's not that you winning is contingent on the opponent not having a good day. It's that you're going to force them to not have a good day. And we are seeing I talked so much about Vandy and how impressive their complementary styles of offense and defense were coming into that game. Well, you're starting to see that with South Carolina as well. This is a South Carolina offense that now has scored more points than any other offense during SEC play, like in the entire league. Now, some South Carolina has more games than some of those teams, but South Carolina is now ranked 5th in the SEC in points per game in SEC games. So if you'd told me before the season in a 16-team SEC,
It's pretty good.
that they'd be sitting there, I'd be going, hey, a special season is right there.
Yeah.
South Carolina averaging, 18-point-something points allowed per game on defense?
Yep.
That's in general and against SEC opponents. So, I mean, it's all right there for this team, but it's because they're playing well on all three phases. Carolina, even without Pete Limbo, now the number 2 highest graded special teams unit in the SEC, behind just Texas, I think, according to PFF.
I mean, those paint a rosy picture, right? And, we all talked about coming into November, you got to go play your best ball. We knew the month of October was going to be really difficult. And we knew you had to come away with a win in October. You got that, November is where you were going to have to do more damage. Beginning of the season, end of season, almost kind of like the middle 8 in football, but the opposite. You expand it out to the beginning and the end, and that's what South Carolina had to do. So, I think that's the thing. You're right, Wes. You look at that first game, somebody asked on the Insiders Forum recently on Gamecock Central, they're like, hey, next time, guys, can we maybe just, let a season play out? It was a real long thread. And everybody's like, that's not going to happen. No, we're going to live week to week. But this team is, way better than it was at the beginning of the season. That can happen. A team can grow. Individuals on a team can grow. We've certainly seen that. How many guys on this team can you pick out that for one reason or another you can say, this guy is playing better than he was at the beginning of the year? The best example is Sellers, right?
Sure.
But you could even say Rocket Sanders. Beamer talked about that on Saturday night after the Vandy game. He looks more comfortable. He looks like himself. Nick Harbor looks like he's taken some strides. You could pick out, the defense has Demetrius Knight. He started the season well. I thought he had his best game against Vandy. And then collectively as a group, they're playing unselfish. They're playing well. That's what you want. That's what you look for. So teams aren't static. They can get better. What you see, we know in this league, especially in 2024, what you see one week is not necessarily what you're going to get the next. And that's especially the case when you look from, game 1 to now going into Game 10 for South Carolina. But the past few games, they've played really good ball.
Well, and to your point, that's the mark of a really good team, is one where everybody simultaneously is continuing to get better all at the same time. And again, guys like Kennard and Stewart and Nemore are already at a certain level defensively for pretty much the entire season. But now you're seeing other guys on defense catch up. Then we're seeing the offense come along. And again, there's just something about the last month of the season for one side of the ball in these past couple of years that's just turned a switch. And that's the offense this year. And no reason to think they can't keep doing this over the next 3 weeks.
The other thing about the defense too, man, is that so your superstars are playing like superstars, but also at times you kind of struggle to even know which guys are the superstars because everybody is playing so well and everybody's playing so complimentary off of each other on defense. Really, I mean, your transfer portal guys on defense, you hit on all of them, and I would even say you hit like you almost they're really outperforming, I would think, what you even expected from these guys. And you know, we talked up Demetrius Knight coming in, but I mean he's outplayed even the high expectations we put on him. So I think when you hit on all those guys, it says something about your evaluations. It says something about your scheme and kind of getting them ready. But then I think the difference the last 2 weeks for me is early on when you're sort of comparing the defense and the offense. If you said, hey man, who are the superstars on this defense? You were going, well, there's a lot of options, but a bunch of names immediately come to mind. You're going, obviously, Kyle Kennard. You're going Dylan Stewart. You're going Nicky Memori. You're going, you know, at the time early on, I would have probably said Debo Williams. Well, if you ask me the same thing, is who you lean on if you're South Carolina. Yes, it sounds like a law firm, but
You got that from Ben Watson on the SEC Network, didn't you?
no, I didn't.
No, he actually said that on Saturday. That's what they should call the offense, and it sounds like a law firm.
Well, I think you got that from me, but I'm just kidding. It works.
It does. It sounds right.
So Ben Watson, Rock Hill guy. I think he's from Rock Hill.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
In Georgia.
I went to Carolina, lived on the same hall as his brother in college.
Did you ask his brother why Ben didn't come here and play?
His brother actually not a football guy at all.
Oh, really?
So I actually avoided. Oh, aren't you Ben Watson's brother? I kind of tried to
Didn't want to be
avoid
that guy.
Yeah, but anyway, those are your difference makers on offense, and you feel like you can lean on those guys.
Take a look what South Carolina has standing in front of them for the final 3 games of the regular season as they try and chase that 9-3 record to round out 2024. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here in the game.
Excited because, guys, next week we have our next live and on-location extended Gamecock Central Takeover Hour out at Wilson Road in Newberry. Taking the show on the road.
I'm already thinking about that brisket, add bacon.
I was going to say.
right now.
Our my 2 colleagues here, the brisket add bacon,
I'm gonna try some of Tyler's hot sauce on there.
the Gator hot sauce.
I had it again on Sunday, by the way.
Did
Phenomenal.
you? Wow. This is like a weekly, it could become a daily habit for Tyler, which is fine because they have all sorts of different subs. Even if you don't want the brisket add bacon, you can check out any of your Firehouse Subs favorites. You can also check out the new Thanksgiving turkey sub. Limited time only. Carved turkey, dressing, mayo, cranberry sauce, all on the Firehouse Subs bun. It's Thanksgiving on a bun, Thanksgiving on a sandwich. It's outstanding. Go check it out. FirehouseSubs.com, or my favorite method, Download the Firehouse Subs app. Use the Rapid Rescue to go, firehousesubs.com.
Welcome back in as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. I've mentioned it a moment ago. The Lori Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest rolls on to another week. $1,000 up for grabs as the Gamecocks take on the Tigers this weekend of Missouri. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win. And, man, they came so close to cashing in for the second year in a row against Vanderbilt. Unfortunately, that ball ended up rolling out of bounds. Couldn't quite capitalize on it, but as Wes said a moment ago, we're inching closer, and your prediction is the Clemson game here in a couple weeks when they will finally, at that point in time, allow someone to win $1,200 from Lori Lisa.
Does it continue into the college football playoff? If
Could it theoretically get to $1,500 or $1,600 is what you're asking me?
Yeah.
I think so. I'm not the one that set the agreement up, but I believe it would work that way.
I feel like, not to speak for them, I feel like if it gets to that point, you either just got to keep rolling with it, right?
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Hopefully. We took a while to hit last year,
There's
too.
a Vanderbilt game last year, 10 games into the season, however long it was.
Hopefully soon, guys. Hopefully soon.
Well, with that Clemson game coming up 3 weeks from now, obviously have 2 more games to get to between now and then, between Missouri and Wofford coming up next weekend. Both very winnable games. I think we look at Missouri, and again, we'll dive into the specifics of them as the week goes along. We'll hear what Coach Drinkwitz has to say ahead of the matchup, but looked like a very beatable team. It took all the miracles in the world to beat Oklahoma on Saturday, and the most chaotic 3 minutes to end a game I think I've seen in a long, long time. So this team's not coming in firing on all cylinders.
Did y'all watch the end of this thing?
I did, yes.
I mean, if you just look at the score and no other context, it just looks like a normal old SEC game with a pretty good finish. And then you realize there was basically no offense at all for most of this game. Then you got a little bit of offense late, but also more just like it was offense turning to defense with scooping scores and crazy plays. And I watched it, and I think I need to go back because I don't even remember what all happened. It was so chaotic. And, you know, this Missouri team strangely sits there with just 2 losses, but they really have not looked good. Like, eye test against good opponents, it's been a struggle. And right now, I think they're severely missing Brady Cook. I mean, he really not only is a good football player, but is a really good fit for what they do with that scheme, is a perfect fit for him. And they kind of did the same thing South Carolina did in terms of going the portal route to bring in some experience at quarterback, bring in some depth. And Gamecock fans will remember Drew Pine, potentially, if you remember this, as the guy who should have been playing South Carolina in the Gator Bowl, but transferred out despite being the starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's been a big difference for them. And, well, Eli Drinkwitz agrees. Remember, he told the Alabama player on the field he got caught lip syncing, or he wasn't lip syncing. He got caught. You know, you could lip read. Said if he had his quarterback, it would be different, which is a weird thing to say during the game, because then you have to go talk about after the Oklahoma game how much you believe in Drew Pine, all those things. But, you know, here's the thing. We'll talk to Gabe DeArmond from Power Mizzou later this week, probably on Thursday, guys, when we're out at Gold Line. And he can give us some thoughts. But from what I see, they just have trouble scoring without Cook. And that shows you just how important quarterback is, because you look at the rest of the Missouri team. Drinkwitz, as goofy as he is, you know, he normally has fielded pretty good offenses, right? Like, he's had some good offenses. Luther Burden is as good as a receiver as you'll find. Theo Weiss, really good receiver. Their offensive line has some pieces, although they're going to be down a significant piece for the South Carolina game. Their center, Connor Tollison, who's an NFL guy, has started 34 games. He's out for the rest of the year. So, you know, for South Carolina, you're catching some more good fortune. And there's been no official word on Cook yet at quarterback. The indicators have not looked good for him to play. So now you're sitting there going, all right, got a backup quarterback. As good as South Carolina's pass rush has been, that seems to play right into your hands, right? So I think the stars are kind of aligning. And to your point, Wes, you know, Missouri, one reason that we favored them, or I favored them to make the college football playoff preseason, is because they're supposed to be a good team and they had a soft schedule. Well, that's going to end up biting them, I think, at the end of the day.
And what's interesting between Missouri and then Clemson coming up at the end of the regular season, similar in a lot of ways, where both teams had lighter schedules, but when we've seen them play better opponents, they got beat pretty handily. Obviously, Clemson got beat by Georgia in week number 1, and then I know it ended up being a 12-point game, but it wasn't that close against Louisville a couple weeks ago. And, you know, Clemson still has to go to Pitt this upcoming weekend, which is a ranked opponent that could certainly, give them trouble. So I see a lot of similarities between these final 2 Power 4 opponents that South Carolina has to wrap up the regular season. And I know the ESPN FPI favors Clemson about 60-40 in that one. It is a home game for Clemson, but no reason to think that Carolina can't win all 3 of these games to close out the year.
Yeah, and we talk about it all the time, guys, how much your perception of a matchup just changes throughout the course of a season. And, you know, we've seen some of these shift multiple times throughout the year. And some of it is, frankly, if you're a Gamecock fan, I'm not sure if there's many teams out there that you should be scared of at all right now. Now, would you be, if this was like a top 5 matchup and one of these coming up, would you be going, hey, either team could win, like we got to play very, very well? Of course, but South Carolina is just playing their game right now, as we've talked about, and Missouri just, frankly, doesn't scare you like they did. And I will say this, though, this has been a season of sort of, righting some wrongs, exorcising some demons, however you want to say it. How nice, how cathartic will it be for Carolina fans, regardless of how it even looks, what the score is, if it's a blowout, if it's close, whatever it may be. Gamecock fans want this one. And there's kind of a little just underlying, I don't think it's a rivalry, but there's just a little weird hatred, I feel like, for among these two fan bases. So for Carolina, this game is important to keep you just on track for a special season. It's important to avoid a letdown, but it's also important just to sort of get off the snide, so to speak, in terms of beating Missouri. Last time it happened, believe it or not, was the monsoon game.
Yeah, you've lost 5 in a row. Drinkwitz, people are just irritated by. I mean, he's flexing after beating Oklahoma on a last-second fumble.
He wore the bowl-eligible T-shirt when they got their 6th win a couple weeks back.
He's talking about the college football playoff. So if you're South Carolina, you have a chance to break that streak, beat someone who's been not only a thorn in your side, but very irritating while doing so.
Even going back to his App State days.
And knocking them officially out of the college football playoff and keeping your own streak going, keeping hope alive for the CFP as well, Wes.
Yeah, and guys, not that their personalities are remotely the same, but have y'all noticed how quickly, so coming into the year, let's say Kentucky and Stoops. It was kind of like, man, this guy has done more with less for years. Look at what he's done there, et cetera, et cetera. And now they've had a really down year, and a lot of people kind of have shifted that to just like, hey, maybe it's run its course. The way Drinkwitz just acts is one of those things that is annoying to opposing fans, but you love it if it's your guy.
Oh, sure.
If you're winning.
Yeah.
But I feel like, so how quickly does it turn potentially against Drinkwitz? I don't know. I don't remember who they have next after Carolina, but if this thing falls off, what's the reaction?
We'll see, and Coach Beamer will speak about that matchup this weekend. Coming up at 1 o'clock today for his usual Tuesday press conference. The men's basketball coming up tonight, 7 o'clock for the pregame coverage starting at 6:30 as they take on Towson, all right here on The Game. Come back, want to hit one more statistic from Saturday as South Carolina did something better on Saturday than they'd done the entire season so far. It's coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Tuesday on The Game.
All right, y'all, coming up this Thursday, come out and see us. We're going to be once again on location at our friends at Gold Line Framing. They always take great care of us whenever we're there, and they can take great care of you in any and all of your custom framing needs. Like I said, come by and see us, 511 12th Street out there in West Columbia. We're going to be going for 3 hours, 9 a.m. to noon. We'll probably have some giveaways, some tickets, and, of course, in-store, you can check out their art gallery, their home decor, their furniture, and other gift items as we get closer and closer to Christmas. Also, come out and see some of their custom framing work they've done in the past and go ahead and get a head start on ordering something for yourself. If you already have ideas or you have questions, call them today, 803-739-1337. But again, come see us. Come see Manager Johnny James. come see owner Kendall Walsh. Huge Gamecock fans who will be hanging out there at goal line at 511 12th Street. Again, that's Thursday, 9 a.m. to noon.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tired Wes Mitchell and Chris Clark along with you. Let's flip the card over and check the stats brought to you by our friends over at Palmetto Cards. Been tracking third downs this entire year. Carolina, best day of the season on third downs, 9 of 12, 75% conversion percentage, 5.5 yards average down and distance. By far their best mark of the entire season. A key to the game on Saturday we knew was going to be huge. Converting third downs and obviously stopping Vanderbilt in the offense for Carolina certainly held up there into the bargain there.
Yeah, man, especially I think against a team, like third downs are always important, but we always talk about how against certain teams there are certain aspects that become more important than usual. Vandy's entire sort of identity, offense and defense, is built on shorten the game, stay on the field offensively, get you off the field, make you go 8, 9, 10 play drives like we talked about. So against that type of team, to be able to do that, especially when it's not your strength, as we know, pretty important for South Carolina, and obviously was a big key in the game.
Identity.
Okay.
You know, I think that it ended up being huge in some instances because you keep drives going. The Gamecocks got what they needed as well from the explosive play standpoint. You know, you went into that game saying you need Rocket to break off some longer runs, and you got that. But this isn't overall a team where, you know, it's 3rd and 9 and you're going to feel like, yeah, you know, they got a great chance to make a play here. I think they've gotten better in that regard. I think Josh Simon, emergence is probably the wrong word because we know what Josh Simon can do. We saw it last year. We saw it earlier in the season. But I think there has become more of a rapport between Sellers and Josh Simon. His emergence, Sellers becoming more comfortable, being able to know when to bail the pocket, when to stay in. We talked about this a lot earlier to open the show. The offense as a whole, when it's individual guys and then it becomes the sum of the parts, you know, they seem more comfortable. So you feel better than you did game 1 about those scenarios. But overall, the way this team is constructed is to move the chains, get in 3rd and short, be able to convert, and then hit some explosive plays. And that was their formula, and they were able to stick to it and execute it on Saturday.
They put themselves in position. Again, the average was 5.5 yards. Half of those 3rd downs were 4 yards and less, and they were 6 for 6 on all those 3rd downs. Again, putting yourself in position, to play to strength of your offense, which still does revolve around the rush. And Carolina obviously did a really good job with that on Saturday. For, again, something like 3rd downs, it's been very up and down. They had a good game against Alabama, 46% that day, but for the most part, kind of been hovering around that 30% mark. So, like one of many things with this offense, hopefully something that can continue to be successful over these next couple weeks to close out the regular season.
Yeah, I think when you play as much zone defense as Vandy does play, when you get in those 3rd and medium, 3rd and shorts, it kind of puts you a little bit out of your comfort zone because you're going, all right, how do we defend this? Typically, if you are a little bit more of a defense that can play man or zone, you get into short yardage, you're going to say, all right, we're gonna cut down on that space, play some bump and run maybe, get another guy into the box, and force them to sort of get the tough yardage. If you're a primarily zone team, most of the weaknesses of your defense are underneath. Well, if it's 3rd and 4, then an underneath completion a lot of times is going to give the opponent a first down. So for Carolina, kind of keeping Vandy out of their comfort zone, just executing for the most part, you know, and I think zone-heavy teams, because all eyes are on the quarterback, there's some maybe pressure on the QB to put the ball in windows, to not have passes batted, to know when to take off running, to know when to maybe give a play a chance to develop a little bit longer. I think Sellers maybe had the two drops, obviously, in terms of like dropping the football. One of the balls went out of bounds. One resulted in a fumble. He had maybe one throw I felt like was in danger over the middle that kind of got batted up, but for the most part, made really good decisions. And you can just almost feel the game slowing down for him. And then it's kind of shifted to where rather than you as like a South Carolina fan are watching going, I hope he doesn't make a mistake, to where you're watching like the defense. If you're facing a guy like Sellers and it's 3rd and short, that offense has so many options. Like they can go short passing game, they can go run game, they can go QB run game, they can go like traditional, just, hey, we know we're going to go for it on 4th down, let's just run straight at him on 3rd down. Or if you get super aggressive on defense, you can say, you know what, we're just going to throw over the top of this, even if it's 3rd and short. So I think when you're in those situations and you have a running quarterback, and South Carolina has shown they're willing to run Sellers. Like they've run him quite a bit this year, and it puts you in such a bind on defense, and that's what we're seeing right now these last few weeks.
The passing game, as you were alluding to, has opened up too in these last few weeks. Good stat, our guy Gamecock Russ was on Twitter.
Great Gamecock.
Great Gamecock. Always brings the heat with the stats. Here's a good one.
Is this stat of the day?
It is the stat of the day, brought to you by Gamecock Russ. And I don't even have to go back.
Palmetto cards.
And Palmetto cards, yes, sorry. I don't even have to go back and check his stats, by the way. I just roll with him. So I'm leaning on Gamecock Russ, but here it is. The only quarterbacks in the SEC that have thrown more touchdowns in conference play than Lenore Sellers, so touchdowns in SEC games, are just Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, Carson Beck, and Diego Pavia. That's it. Sellers has thrown 9 touchdowns in conference play. Quinn Ewers 11, Jackson Dart, Beck, Pavia all have 10 each. So pretty good for a quarterback that isn't like, look at those guys. None of those guys are in year one.
No.
They're all very experienced college football players. They're all, 2 to 3 of them are thought of as, I mean, I've seen hype for all of them in the first round.
Sure.
And Pavia, we know what he's done. And Sellers is right up there with them as a redshirt freshman, where the biggest part of his game has been learning how to be a passer. Not that he couldn't, but that was just the part of the game you identified as that's the area where you got that and ball security, you got to get better. And look where he already is.
Off of that, we'll save this for the last segment. Bill and Preston talked about that this morning of how many quarterbacks in the SEC right now would you take over Lenore Sellers if you had the opportunity to, replace them and put them on this team? We'll talk about that to wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you for a few more minutes here on your Tuesday. We're talking a little bit about Lenore Sellers in that last segment. Chris brought up the stat that he has the most touchdown passes, or third most touchdown passes against conference opponents so far this year.
Yes.
And it brought me back to something I heard Bill and Preston talking about this morning, and wanted to state this question to you guys. Out of all the quarterbacks in the SEC, about what we know about them right now through 9-10 games, how many they played, how long is the list of guys you would take over Lenore Sellers as of right now? Because going into the year, again, unproven. We hadn't seen him start a game. You know, he was projected to be one of the lower-end quarterbacks in the SEC, but has obviously, especially these past couple weeks, played himself to looking like one of the better ones here as of late. So, and yeah, obviously you would go with like a Jalen Milroe, certainly. But outside of that, how many other guys would you say, yes, I would definitely take that guy over Sellers here at South Carolina?
Yeah, and are we talking about the fact that Sellers is just getting started? Like, is this a keeper league if this is fantasy football? You know what I mean? Like for right now, just right now. This isn't like for the next X amount of years. Like right now, today, if you were to take a quarterback, how many would you take over Sellers? I'll readily admit this is a homer answer, but it's honestly like 0 for me. Like I think we're only seeing the surface at this point, and I think we're going to see even more these final 3 games. Certainly, if you give it to me like the career. You know, like you said, not just right now, the career, I think I'm taking Sellers, period. But even, you know, when Milroe gets the run game going, he's nearly impossible to stop. But we've also seen him heavily limited at times this year, too. I really liked Nussmeier. When we saw him here in Columbia, I thought he actually may be the best NFL prospect among the quarterbacks for this year in the SEC. But he really has not played all that well lately, obviously. Carson Beck has not played well lately. I mean, Jackson Dart is maybe in the conversation for me. Like Dart in that offense when it's really going. And I know Ole Miss has skewed a little bit maybe towards defense than we expected, but still, Dart's a really good football player, can do it with his legs as well. But I'm going completely homer answer, but Sellers, man, I'm just that high on the dude, I think.
Yeah, well, it's hard to block out the, you know, even though you say it's the here and now, like you just have in your mind he's a redshirt freshman, you know, and so you try to answer the question the right way, but you think about getting him, what he's going to be as a junior, a redshirt junior, well, assuming you can keep him around that long, redshirt junior, redshirt sophomore next year. I also think, you know, when you think about how a team's constructed, it's super easy to say Carolina would be undefeated if they had Jackson Dart. You know, I don't know. I mean, look at, you know, to your point, Wes, Ole Miss, they built a great defense as well. I mean, they came into this year with what was thought of as one of the best receiving corps in the country, and they've got so many running backs that, you know, Rashad Amos, one of the most sought-after, former Gamecock, one of the most sought-after transfers in the country.
A long time ago, it feels like.
Barely played. Like, I think he has a few carries this season. So, you know, Lane Kiffin's offense is different. The way they administer it's different. I think when you think about Sellers, you think of a specific skill set which really, really blends well with what South Carolina's done. It's not always as easy as drop that coach in that situation or drop that player in that situation and things are going to improve. So, I mean, I think you can make a really compelling argument for a Jalen Milroe, especially because he can run so well, right? Maybe another couple guys in there. But the point is it's not a long list. Which is, you know, if there's a list at all, you know, if there is a list, it's short, and that's really impressive for a guy who's in year one as a starter.
Yeah, certainly so. And again, I go back to how he played last week against A&M, where, again, he put together a full 4 quarters of looking like the quarterback that we hoped he was going to be. Followed it up, you know, this past weekend against Vanderbilt, and this just kind of him coming to form and obviously being helped out by the guys around him, having a good run game with Rocket Sanders, having a reliable target in Josh Simon, in addition to receivers that can make catches when they're called upon as well. Like, And the offensive line certainly is still a work in progress, but, seeing him mature over this entire year has been a fun thing to watch, and I'm hopeful to see him continue to even make more improvements over these next couple weeks and maybe look even better against a Missouri or a Clemson or whatever it may be as the season wraps up.
He obviously had more just kind of flashy splash plays against A&M, but I liked just some of those underneath throws against Vanderbilt, how they were in rhythm, they were accurate. I thought he made so many great plays against A&M. I thought he left a couple of the easy ones out there on the table, especially late when Carolina was trying to put the game away. They had a couple underneath throws that were maybe there, and he just missed. So I feel like he cleaned those up a good bit against Vanderbilt. And so if you can kind of take the easy access throws and put that on top of the big plays you're going to get as well, then there's just a whole lot to like about what he can continue to bring to this team. And we'll see, the upside of this team, I think, is kind of built on his continued improvement as this year goes along. And, as long as this continues week in, week out, I go back to what Dow Loggins said last week. Like, you almost always are going to see your OC kind of give support for the quarterback. But did y'all notice how Loggins went above and beyond? He's like, guys, we have a quarterback. We got a guy. We got our guy is here already. And so I tend to think that we're only going to see that improve as the year goes on, because we've already seen evidence that this kid just keeps getting better.
I think that's the next step, too, in the evolution. You were saying earlier, Wes, that you think we're going to see even better. And, even early on, the reason that people were so excited about Sellers is because they knew, and we saw a few glimpses, the very viral plays that he made against, Furman and Vandy last year. And then if you watched him in high school, you knew his size, his athleticism, his ability to throw it and run it. And then you actually saw that small sample size. And then you heard from people who watched practice that he could do similar things to that in practice. So that, automatically trained you, okay, this guy can do some special things. The question is always, when you're a quarterback, you have to have it upstairs too. And another reason why everybody, including, us here, we're so excited about him is because we knew he had all those tools as well. He has leadership qualities, and he's smart. He picks things up fast. He can run your offense for you. And he's a competitor. And that second part, when you're playing for the first time, that's the part that just takes time. So, game one wasn't him as a finished product. He even showed some things in game 1, game 2, game 3 that athletically you're like, wow. So the rest of it has started to catch up now. And just continuing to make the right play, the best play, as Wes was talking about earlier, that's the next step for him.
Start turning our attention to Missouri coming up tomorrow. We'll hear what Coach Beamer says coming up in a little over an hour for his usual Tuesday press conference as well. It's been the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here on The Game.